Greetings and salutations. How's everybody's year going so far? Just a short one today. I might do another one later actually, but this is just a quick one. I just wanted to have a quick shout out here for True Arrow. Man, I love your work. You do some great work. But you did have some questions or comments in a recent video that I wanted to address. Specifically, how to put this to keep it algorithmically proper. Regarding the weather, let's say. Firstly, it's pretty easy to find. It's an hour and 4-minute long talk, but you can find the relevant clip. It's probably 10 years ago now, during the Obama administration. I'm not sure if it was his first or second term, but Obama's CIA Director John Brennan addressed the Council on Foreign Relations. Council on Foreign Relations. And at some part in the speech, he addressed the topic of geoengineering. And then he specifically got into stratospheric aerosol injection. And he explained that it would be a relatively cheap program to do weather modification on a global scale to mitigate climate change and to extend the life of the fossil fuel industry so that we could adequately transition to green energy. But he also addressed that the same technology could be abused and used as a weapon of war. He referred to it as stratospheric aerosol injection, and that basically means they use metal particulates, chiefly aluminium oxide and iron oxide, and the surface level pitch for what SAIs are for is to reduce the albedo of the Earth and reflect sunlight by basically creating cloud cover and using that to reflect the sun's heat back out of the atmosphere before it reaches the ground. Now, I don't know if you're familiar at all with former US Senator Nick Begich Jr., but he was also a technician at Texas Instruments, and he worked on the electronics for the Scud missile system. So he's not a kook, he was an elected official. And he warned about the dangers of what's called the High Altitude Auroral Active Research Program, otherwise known as HAARP. Now, I'll make the analogy pretty simple for you, mate. You ever stuck a fork in the microwave? Right, so you understand that metal and microwaves react in a certain way, energetically. And so what we have with SAIs is the ability to use a ground-based microwave radar station. There's at least 2 in Australia, one in Exmouth in Western Australia, and I have heard tell that there's one in Sutherland in Sydney. I wouldn't be surprised if in the years since more arrays have gone up. And basically the idea is you can either directly spray these metal particles or you can add them as a fuel additive. Low in the parts count per million. And then use ground-based radar to cook the ionosphere, creating high-pressure zones. And you can use those high-pressure zones to move weather cells around, whether you want to create a drought or a rain or even a flood. In extreme cases, you could probably use the same technology, especially if you had multiple ground-based arrays working in sequence, to create more severe weather, like cyclones, or possibly direct the path of an existing cyclone system and make it hit land where you want. The technology's there. You seem like a fairly straight-laced cat, so I think Max Egan might be a little bit out there for you. But good old Maxie put out a video back during the last bushfire season. I can't remember the title, can't remember the date, but in it he played a clip that was either from Channel 7 Sunrise or the Today Show. And they had a gentleman on who was an Australian, and he was talking about his business, which is a weather modification business. And he said that his company had actually been used at the very end to help put out the Black Saturday bushfires. And in the intervening years, he'd been paid by the South African government to make it rain for agricultural purposes. And if you need any further confirmation, then one simple thing you can do is just look up weather modification in Texas. And you can find very quickly the Texas government application form for civilians. Not exactly civilians, but people with relevant licensing to carry out weather modification for agricultural purposes in Texan airspace. Now, given all of this, and the number of textbooks you can find, the university courses on weather modification, the debate's over. The technology exists. Whether it's being used currently and in a weaponized form may be debatable, but weather modification using stratospheric aerosol injections, is very, very real. The second point you made in the same video, well, hang on a second. Let's just address that in a little more depth, because the thing you got to ask yourself is, if this technology exists, why is it not used to mitigate bushfires and flooding? In the best case scenario, and in the worst case scenario, you have to ask, is it why we're suffering such severe bushfires and flooding? So that's something to think about there. The second point you made in the same video was regarding Freemasonry, and how a lot of people in the freedom movement seem, in your opinion, overly concerned with such. Now, my grandfather was a Freemason and a high-ranking police officer. And for a long number of years, I was very resentful of that fact and thought it might have had something to do with his alcoholism. In the intervening years, I've learnt more about what it is that Freemasons are all about. And you are correct when you say that it's a big organization. So, of course, there are some nefarious types in there. And I don't disagree. And in fact, given that it's a self-development course, I actually would even recommend, if there's a way to get the knowledge without swearing any oaths against the lives of your offspring, shall we say, that the first 3 degrees are probably a good way for a young man to lead himself on a path of self-development and make friends with some people of the same sort of mindset. However, once you look into Masonry on a wider scale, you realize that there are different degrees and different strains of Masonry, and they have different levels of connection to the different institutions and houses of power in governments around the world. Of particular concern, given what we saw and what some of us suspect about those red uniform, or the red labelled uniforms of police in Melbourne, particularly around the days of the protesters being shot at the memorial. We are concerned that the police in the Fraternal Masonic Order of Police, or whatever its particular name is, might have some sort of dual allegiance. That's for a start. You add that to the Foreign Forces Bill, and we don't know if some of their brothers from police forces in rougher parts of the world might not have been deployed on our streets under the cover of anonymity that those new uniforms seem to provide. Then there's the Royal Society, major choke point for scientific knowledge and industrial development in the Western world and the British Empire. That's a Masonic order. And then you learn about key figures in higher places who also happen to be Masons. You know, like every president of the United States appears to be a Mason. But I haven't really checked on the last few. But they're a sworn secret brotherhood with people in high places and a penchant for keeping those secrets and being loyal to each other rather than the profane members of the public. So that is of some concern. The wink and a nod and all that. So yeah, it's not just tinfoil hat lunacy. There are some genuine concerns there. Yeah, but keep up the good work, dude. I really like what you do. And you are one of the more straight-laced, forward-facing members of the rebel media. So congrats. Just thought I'd speak my mind on that topic. And I guess I hope it's useful to the rest of you out there. And my 2-year-old's decided to be a handful right now, so I gotta go. So I'll just say peace, love, and kung fu. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm over on Rumble now as well. Going to be trying to do dailies, so it might be a short one, or you might get a long one. It's all pretty freeform, so who knows? Who knows? So peace, love, and kung fu. Black Eye out, and Happy New Year to you all.